everybody, it's Jenny, and today I'm sharing a card for missing stamps using the newest layering Highland Cow stencil. I'm going to start off by taking a closer look at each of the layers, starting with layer 1, and then all of the following layers are labeled as well. And this Highland Cow layering set is made up of a total of 6 different stencils. And to keep all my layers lined up while I'm inking, I'm also going to be using this positioning guide. To get started, I'm going to bring in an A2 size piece of white cardstock and just hold that in place on my craft mat with a piece of washi. And then I'm going to bring in the 6th layer of this stencil set just to get an idea of the placement of the image on my cardstock. And then I'm going to hold down that positioning guide with some washi as well. Next up, I can go ahead and bring in that first layer and just tack that down with some more washi and then start inking. And I decided to go in with some antique linen to start. Next up, I'm going to bring in some brushed corduroy for some dimension. I'm going to use these same colors to go ahead and fill in those flower centers on this layer as well. For my second layer, I'm going to go ahead and use the antique linen again for the face, hair, ears, and tail of the cow. Then I'm going to use some barn door to go ahead and fill in that little birdie. I was going for a cardinal. For the third layer, I'm going to use some tattered rose distress oxide to fill in the cow's nose, as well as some black soot for my little birdie's beak and feet. For my flowers, I'm going to use squeezed lemonade and picked raspberry, and before I started inking, I just wiped away that extra black ink so I didn't accidentally smear that into my flowers. I used my larger blending brush to fill in all the yellow and then a smaller one to just go ahead and tap the pink just around the centers of each of the flowers. For most of layer 4, I'm just going to use some black soot to fill in the nostrils, eyes, and hooves on the bird and the cow. I'm going to use antique linen one more time and go ahead and color in the horns on the cow. I'm going to use bundled sage to color in some of the leaves and stems on layer 5. And for the final layer, the rest of the leaves and stems, I'm going to use some mowed lawn. So my overall idea for this card was to make it look like a framed image. So I'm going to bring in the wood grain frame die and go ahead and trim out my inked cow. So I trimmed out the center with my die, and then I decided to go in with some tumbled glass distress oxide to just add a bit of sky to the background. Then I just brought in some gathered twigs to go ahead and add some brown to the ground. Next up, to create the actual frame, I'm going to bring in this paper stack from my stash and pick out a coordinating brown color. Then I'm going to run those through my die cut machine to go ahead and cut that out. Once I had that cut out, I decided I wanted to go ahead and use some gathered twigs to add some dimension to the edge of my frame. My cardstock had a bit of coating on it. It was kind of glossy, so it was making the ink hard to stick and it was just kind of sliding around. But after a while, I finally got it to stick. To create my picture frame, I'm going to add some double-sided adhesive to the back of my die cut here, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in some scrap acetate from my stash, and I'm just going to line that up real quick to see where I need to trim it down so it fits behind. Next up, I can remove that release paper and then go ahead and add that acetate to the back. Next up, I wanted to pop up my frame a tiny bit, but not so much that it looked like a shaker card. So instead, I'm going to use my thin foam tape and go ahead and add a strip on each side. Next up, I'm going to bring in an A2 card base, and in order to get my image centered on the card front, I cut out an extra frame so that I could use that to line up my middle piece. And I'm just going to go ahead and attach that down with some double-sided tape. And once I have that in place, I can go ahead and add on my picture frame. For my sentiment, I'm going to use the Highland Cow stamp set, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp out "Heard It's Your Birthday" onto some black cardstock with some Versamark ink, and then I'm going to heat emboss that with some white detail embossing powder. And you'll see here that I used the top of the ink pad as a stamp block because I could not find mine for the life of me, but it worked out just as well. I used a paintbrush to wipe away any stray bits of embossing powder, and then I went ahead and melted that with my heat tool. And then I'm just going to go ahead and trim that down with my scissors. Then I'm going to attach that to the card front with some double-sided tape. I wanted the sentiment to look like a little plaque at the bottom of the frame, so once I have that attached, I'm going to use some gold liquid pearls to add a dot on either side to make it look like two little nails. And once I have those in place, I'm going to go ahead and tap the card on my desk just to help those settle. And here is a closer look at my finished card. I think the addition of the acetate along with the frame just gives a fun extra little detail to the card. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!